Hi, I'm Lance Wright. I'm a recovering addict, alcoholic, and convicted felon.
Lance.
Thank you. There's always family. I've been sober over 32 years now. And I have a wonderful life, a blessed life. There was a point in my life where I wouldn't have ever thought of being here. So I'm grateful for all of you being here and allowing me to share. For me as an addiction recovery specialist, I've learned something vital, something from my own experience. Addiction isn't so much about the drugs, the alcohol, or the behaviors. Addiction is about our programming. What do I mean by that? As human beings, we're programmable. From birth, growing up, we're being imprinted upon by family, environment, culture. And those imprintings become how we see ourselves and how we see the world. My own programming began when I was a little boy. I was about 4 or 5 years old. It was the 1960s. My mom was out doing her own thing. I believe she had an alcohol and a drug problem, as I understand it. And my father was nowhere present. My earliest memories were being home and alone in the middle of the night, holding my little dachshund Duchess in my arms, afraid, alone, scared, wondering if Mom was going to come home. That programming I didn't have words for then, but in my spirit, I was learning that I was unloved, unwanted, and abandoned. That programming didn't change. As I got into elementary school, I was a terror. I couldn't sit still, so the teachers would send me to the principal's office. And I would sit on that little bench outside the principal's office. And the language and the identity that was being formed is I'm different. Nobody wants me. I'm that little bastard kid that nobody loves. That narrative, that programming became unbearable in my teens. I started to use drugs, alcohol, and commit crime. Chaos was my drug of choice. The people I associated with that reinforced my chaos, they became my peers. When I turned 21, my programming took me exactly where it was supposed to take me. I was sentenced to a life sentence in the state of California prison system. You'd think that disruption would change me, but it didn't. I carried that identity, that programming, that narrative into prison with me. I kept using drugs and alcohol to cope with a situation I couldn't possibly cope with. It was all I knew. That was until March 11th, 1993. I was caught in possession of drugs and under the influence. I was 9 years in. I was 3 months to my first parole board hearing, where I was going to ask you to let me go home. I felt my life was over. It was about 1:30 in the morning that day. I remember snotty nose, tears, brokenness on my knees. And I had this epiphany moment, this disruption, this voice. This is not who I am. How did this happen? Maybe some of you have had that moment in life. For me, that was a pivotal moment, a pivotal disruption that changed the direction of my life. I didn't have the answers then, but I knew I didn't want what I had. Fast forward about 1.5 years later, a cellie says, hey, go to a 12-step meeting with me. Well, I was in a place of brokenness and surrender, so I said yes. In that room, I heard a man speak. He spoke of pain and hurt. How it led him to become a monster and hurt people and himself. How he found somebody that could help him change his life. And he followed some suggestions and his life got better and it was pretty good. And I could have that too. This man had a wisdom I didn't, and he had a life I wanted. So I asked Richard to be my sponsor. And I say his name with reverence. Because I know he's here, in here. We started to do these 12 steps, and we came to a place in the 12-step process where I was talking about my father, the one I never knew or never heard from. And I remember reading off of my list. He was never there. He didn't love me. He abandoned me and my mom, and so on and so on. I was in a rage. I had never been that angry in my life. Who was this guy? In that rage, Richard looked at me. He made a statement, and then he asked a question. He says, Lance, you've been carrying that a long time. Can I ask a couple questions? Richard had a way of that. And I said, yes, kind of in bewilderment because that rage was still very palpable. He goes, do you know why your mother and father went their separate ways? No. Did your mother ever say your father didn't love you? No. Did your father ever say he didn't love you? No. After several more questions and several more no responses, that rage, that hurricane quieted. I was in a state of awe and bewilderment. And it was in that place that Richard spoke and said, it's perfectly understandable that a little boy would create a story to understand a situation he couldn't possibly understand. That was wrong. You should have had someone there to love you and guide you through that. But what you did with that and how you've lived your life and hurt yourself and other people, that's wrong too. And today we can begin to change that. That disruption changed everything in my life. It opened a path to a freedom I couldn't quite understand and didn't know. The thing about our programming is I work as an addiction recovery specialist. I work with a lot of people every week. Nights, days, it doesn't matter. They don't discriminate. And something I've come to find that's vital and something from my own personal experience is that the problem is not drugs and alcohol. It's the trauma. It's the hurt. It's the stories we carry that we want to escape from. You see, our coding from a young age, most of us, it's automatic pilot. We don't think about it. It's just the way it is. Think about how you tie your shoes. Say please or thank you. Maybe even play baseball. You don't have to think about those things. Those are perfectly normal. Second nature, habits. But what if that programming was negative? What if it said, you can't show feelings or emotions, it's a weakness. You're different. Nobody cares. How would that show up in someone's life as an adult? Maybe some of you connect with that. Most of the clients I work with when they come into treatment have no idea what I'm talking about. They think it's just not using and drinking. Something that I have found over the years working in addiction treatment as a professional is when someone comes into detox and residential treatment, the primary issue isn't drugs and alcohol, although that's discussed and obviously addressed. The number one thing in treatment is the traumas and the narratives that one carries that creates an unhealthy lifestyle and makes drugs and alcohol a choice. Of course, alcohol and substances are an addiction and they do have their own story. But what I'm talking about is the deeper addiction, what I like to call thought addiction. You see, for many of us, we carry these thoughts in the background and they impact our lives in ways we're not even aware of. Maybe our relationships, maybe our employer, maybe just life. It limits us, it holds us back. It's that voice that says no. One of the things that I've discovered and what I follow when I'm helping people, and I call it neurotransformation, there are 3 parts to it. They're the 3 stages of neurotransformation. One is awareness. One has to become aware of the narrative, the programming. Think about a code that you've recently had, a programming that you've recently had that shows up in your life, or maybe a behavior or a response to that. Where did that come from? What is that? And 3, name it. Give it a name. This is my I'm not lovable code. I'm different code. I have to be better than code. Whatever that is for you. In order to change something, we have to become aware of the code, or the codes that we carry. The second stage is disruption. We have to begin disrupting the old code with something new. When that thought, that feeling, that emotion comes up, not this time. Intervene, set a boundary. The second part is replace it with something new. I am lovable. I am not different. And my voice has value. And the third part of that is practicing in all my affairs. Think of it as this. If you have a hard time with validation or somebody saying polite things, go out today. Say something nice to somebody and don't run away. Sit there and listen for their response and receive it without deflecting. Yeah. And the third part of neurotransformation, the third stage of neurotransformation, is practice. In order for a new code to become hardwired and become a part of who we are, you have to practice it habitually. They call this neuroplasticity, the brain's ability to rewire itself. Even deeply grooved coding can be changed through habitual practice. That kind of scared me. These are the 3 stages of neurotransformation that I've learned in my own journey, that I shared with you, that I hopefully you take with you today to look at your own lives. Alcohol and substances isn't the true addiction. It's not a they thing, it's a we thing, because everybody has these problems in some form or fashion, big or small. Is it going to be easy? No. Change is hard. It's scary. It's difficult. It's frustrating. I can't tell you the nights that went by where I resented Richard for telling me something about myself that I knew was true that I really didn't want to deal with. But I stuck with it. And if you do too, you can find freedom just like I have. I want to leave you with one question. If you could change one code that would change your life, what would it be? And what would that freedom look like to you?